Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Well, look like SNAP benefits will be given. Now, they didn't say what day because there are some people online saying they didn't get it yet. And Donald Trump, not on his own, always remember this, he was ordered by two federal judges to go to the contingency funds so that people can get their SNAP benefits. He did not do this on his own. He did it by order of two federal judges. So Donald Trump was more than willing to let people starve out here, and he was fine with the whole thing. So it is not going to be their full payment, it's just a partial payment. So somebody that gets only $200 will probably get like 100 or even less, depending on what they define as a partial payment, which means chances are they're going to be in the same dilemma if this government shutdown goes through December. Now, right now, we're probably around the same time it was back in 2018. You know, I think as of tomorrow or the day after, we'll be past that time. So, this will historically be the longest government shutdown in the history of this country. And this is exactly what they want. So, you know, it's not fair to the people, but these politicians are not really trying to reopen anything, y'all. They're on the cameras telling you this and that, but they're really not trying that hard. They're more divided than ever. So we're just going to listen to what's being said about this partial payment that's supposed to go out to SNAP recipients. And I hope y'all get the money, especially the people that need the food. I hope you get it. And, try to stock up if you're able to do so. I know that's really hard when you're not getting your full amount. I certainly understand that. All right. Let me share. Please give me a one if you can see my screen. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it is part of, Project 2025 was to shut down the government. And see, if you remember back in 2018, they were mad. MAGA was mad at Donald Trump because he was the one that broke down and reopened the government. And they were mad as hell at him for doing that. They wanted him to hold out longer. And when he reopened, they had a meltdown. So this time around, I think he's going to, hold out as long as he can. But in the meantime, I saw more stories online about people in Hawaii are now getting their health care bills, and many of them have doubled and tripled and quadrupled. And this is going to happen nationwide, you know? So it's a lot of things being done behind the scenes. And by the time this government opens up, it's going to be things that hurt most of the population out here. And that's what they want. Because they figure if they have you angry and poor and desperate and need food, you're easy to control. That's what they're thinking. But I'm thinking that's why your ass had to go run to military bases because you know what you're doing to the people is wrong. All right, y'all, let's get into it.
Good news, y'all. You can postpone your grocery store shoplifting trips because President Trump just agreed to partially fund SNAP benefits during the shutdown. So, grocery stores might actually be safe again for now. So here's what's happening. A federal judge told the administration they can't just stop food stamps. So the Trump team is using about $4.6 billion in contingency funds to cover half of November's benefits for the 42 million Americans on SNAP. The alternative was to take over $8 billion from the Child Nutrition Program, which would impact school lunches and food programs for our children. So the administration shot that down. Now, this isn't full funding for SNAP. It's just enough to keep people fed for now, but at least it's something considering the government's been shut down for 34 days, making this the second longest shutdown in U.S. history. So how will it work? The USDA is putting together what's called a benefit calculation table for each state. That tells each state how much to pay out, basically the same formula as usual, just cut in half. So if you normally get $600 a month, you'll likely see $300. If you get $200, it'll be around $100. So everyone who's already eligible will automatically get half of their normal amount on their EBT cards. No need to reapply or call anyone. The Treasury Secretary said states could start sending those payments out as early as Wednesday, depending on how fast each system updates. Meanwhile, states like New York are declaring emergencies just to keep food programs running. And the part that really stings is that this all could have been avoided. If the Democrats would have just voted to reopen the government through November 21st, they could have continued negotiations through then. So if you're tired of this political theater, call your representatives and tell them to get back to work and open the government, because while they sit there bickering and getting paid, real families are standing in grocery aisles wondering how they're going to pay for dinner. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
The Trump administration says that SNAP benefits will be partially funded through the month of November. This comes after 2 federal court rulings where judges said that if there's money, it needs to be used. This comes after the Department of Agriculture, which oversees the SNAP program, said that funds would be delayed starting on November 1st, saying that we weren't able to continue funding the program while the government is shut down, even though 1 in 8 Americans rely on SNAP benefits. However, even with the court ruling, SNAP will not be fully funded in the month of November. This is because it costs about $8 billion a month to fully fund the SNAP program, and all that's left in the account is $4.65 billion. Meaning that by fully draining these SNAP funds for the month of November, it'll likely set us up for a similar situation in December if the government is still shut down. It's also unclear how much each individual receiving SNAP benefits will be getting and when they'll be likely to see that money showing up on their SNAP or EBT card, as the November payments have already been delayed for millions of people. But prior to this court ruling, a lot of food banks and even states were trying to find solutions to help people that relied on SNAP benefits, with some states setting up systems to help reload these benefit cards using state taxpayer dollars. However, federal judges from both Rhode Island and Massachusetts separately required the government to use the emergency fund to fund the SNAP benefits through the month of November. However, Deputy Undersecretary for Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services at the USDA, Patrick Penn, was on record during a court proceeding explaining some of the government's decisions, saying that the government wasn't planning to tap into the SNAP emergency fund because they didn't want there to be a gap in child nutrition services for the rest of the fiscal year, which is running from October 2025 to September 2026. However, if the government chose to not continue to fund SNAP, it would cause a lot of Americans to have to choose between paying bills or buying food, which is why a lot of state governments have been amping up support for state-level food service programs. And while there's a lot of political fights between the Democrats and Republicans and the president and Congress right now, let's put into context who is actually getting SNAP benefits. In 2025, to qualify for SNAP, the overall net income of the household has to be below the national poverty line. So for a family of 4, that's $32,000 being brought in per year. Meaning this isn't the same as other government programs that people might potentially find loopholes to benefit from when they don't really need it. And what I mean by that is, if individuals are getting SNAP benefits, they truly do need the money. So hopefully with the government being able to fund SNAP at about half capacity for the month of November, people will be able to get by. And hopefully by December, the government is back up and running and SNAP is able to be fully funded again. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below and make sure to follow for more political content.
Let's not be naive here. Walmart, Kroger, all the big box stores definitely leaned on the White House to release those SNAP funds because they don't care about denying the court. But now they're saying they're going to release the funds. But why in the hell does the court have to tell you to do what's right by people? And this is especially frustrating because when I was door knocking last year in public housing, where a large amount of the people depend on SNAP, they were telling me she's not black enough. But here it is, the courts having to force the president of all the people to feed his community. And let's not talk about how this is unchristian behavior. Like, The people who say they love Jesus will let people starve to own the libs.
These snap updates are disheartening. Donald Trump said that he's in full compliance with the orders from the federal judges. They just need to walk him through this. So as of now, they're releasing partial payment. And the only reason they could release partial payment because in their emergency funds, they only have access to $4.6 billion, whereas you need $8 to $9 billion a monthly to cover all the SNAP recipients. This is where it gets complicated because the feds have to work with the state, they have to work with the vendors. All three of these people have to work together to release these funds. And since it's like, I want to say one of the first times that they release partial payments, it could take anywhere from several weeks to months to figure out how they're going to release these partial payments. And for the new SNAP recipients that was approved in November, you all are not going to receive any SNAP benefits at all because the reserves, they don't have any more emergency funding. And they're not going to tap into, I want to say, Section 32 funds. That's with the tariffs. Y'all could fact check me on that. 32, I want to say it's Section 32 funds because they're setting that aside for other children nutrition programs. Once again, like, how do y'all feel about this? Because I just feel like it's disheartening. It's like all the logistics and figuring out how they're going to process everything, why people actually don't have anything to eat, and the holidays is just right around the corner. And this is just for the month of November.
Yeah, the White House just announced it will partially fund SNAP benefits after a pair of judges ruled the food aid program needs to continue. The food aid program needs to continue right now. 42 million Americans rely on it. Right now, we don't know how much money they're getting or how quickly they'll get it. The average monthly benefit is about $190 per person. The Department of Agriculture said last month that November's SNAP would not be paid.
SNAP recipients can expect a deposit on their EBT cards as the Trump administration just announced that they will be funding the SNAP benefits for the month of November in part to the 42 million Americans who are on the food stamp program. Now, if you remember on Friday, there were two separate U.S. District Court federal judges who ruled against the Trump administration. One was in Boston, Massachusetts. The other one was in Providence, Rhode Island. Now, Judge O'Connell from Rhode Island gave the Trump administration until today to report back to the judge and let him know exactly what their plan is as far as funding the November SNAP program. Now, at the time, we had no idea how much the Trump administration would fund the November SNAP benefits, nor did we know when it would occur. So as of right now, this is what's going to happen. EBT cardholders, SNAP recipients will receive 50% of what they're supposed to receive for the month of November. The USDA has tapped into the contingency fund. The contingency fund is that $5.2 billion fund. They've tapped into some of it, and they're going to fund 50% of what you normally get. States are now being allowed to report to the EBT vendor what that amount is for each SNAP recipient in their state. So if you get $100 a month, the state is going to tell the EBT vendor you're going to get $50. And then once the vendors have that information, they can calculate that, put it out onto your EBT cards, and you will receive 50% of November SNAP benefits. They have not mentioned that they're going to give any more than that. That is all the information that is available right now. So we'll see what happens with this. We are on day number 34 of this government shutdown. And, it's not looking great as far as the Democrats and Republicans coming together. So we'll see what happens with all of this. I will definitely keep you updated on this, of course. Please like, follow, and share so that I can continue to provide you with content. And I appreciate you being here.
Our significant breaking news just coming in. The Trump administration says now it will be funding food benefits for families in America that need the SNAP food assistance. This just coming down, there was concern that the administration was not going to continue to fund these critical food benefits for 1 in 8 American families. But after a judge's ruling last week, it now appears that the administration is reversing course and deciding that despite the government shutdown, it will find the contingency funds to partially fund these SNAP benefits, a huge deal for families in America, millions of families who require this food assistance to keep food on the table and feed their families. Now, the question is, how long is this going to last? Right now, this new ruling is about just the month of November. So will we be back in this situation again in December? Will the government still be shut down for the weeks to come? That has yet to be seen. We'll, of course, update you here.
On Monday, the Trump administration said it would partially fund SNAP after 2 judges required it to keep the program running. The Department of Agriculture initially said it would freeze payments beginning November 1st because of the government shutdown. In Oregon, more than 750,000 people rely on SNAP to help them afford groceries. At this point, it's unclear how much people will get or when that money will go out for SNAP recipients to use. In the meantime, we checked in with a couple food banks over the weekend. They say they've seen a surge in demand with twice the amount of people they typically see.
I don't see that we can sustain the amount of people that keep coming in.
There are also businesses all over the Portland metro area collecting donations, fundraising, or giving out free meals. You can find a list of those businesses at our website, kgw.com. All you have to do, search the word SNAP.
As the shutdown drags on and 2 federal court judges have said that the Trump administration has to use contingency funds to at least partially fund SNAP benefits for November, the administration has now said that it will, in fact, use those funds to partially fund SNAP benefits for November. So that's a good thing. Walmart in particular was going to take a big hit because they have a lot of customers who use SNAP benefits, including many of their own employees. Within a couple days, this will be the longest government shutdown ever, eclipsing the 35-day shutdown that Trump had in his first term over Trump's border wall. Republicans ultimately backed down. Looking forward to midterms next year, Donald Trump's approval rating continues to drop. In a CNN poll, it's at 37%. Take that number with a grain of salt, but look at the trends for each poll. Is it dropping in each poll, whatever that disfavorable rating is? Is it increasing? Is it staying the same? With CNN, it's a pretty low number, but it's also dropping. Democrats have a 5-point edge in the generic Who Should Control Congress poll, 5% over the Republicans in terms of who people say should be in control of Congress. That number was about 11 points a year before the 2018 midterms, so not quite as strong for the Democrats. More news. Election day is tomorrow, Tuesday. New Jersey and Virginia pick governors and members of their state legislatures. And then, of course, there's the New York mayoral race. That one will be interesting as well.
The Trump administration has announced that they will partially fund SNAP for November. Now, these payments will be very much delayed because they have to recalculate the partial payment for every household that receives SNAP benefits. This announcement comes after on Friday, 2 federal judges ordered the Trump administration to fund SNAP using contingency funds. They have $4.62 billion to fund SNAP for the month of November. The Trump administration came today, November 3rd, and asked the courts if they have to fully fund SNAP or if they could partially fund SNAP. The court said that they could partially fund SNAP using the contingency funds, but they highly encouraged them to fully fund it by using other funds within the government. The Trump administration said that it would be too big of a risk to use other funds within the government to fully fund SNAP. They were specifically referring to the child nutrition program, saying that they're not going to take billions from the child nutrition program to be able to fund SNAP. Now, the court said that they could use funds from various areas within the government to redistribute to be able to fund SNAP fully. There are billions of dollars that they could take to be able to fully fund SNAP. The Trump administration said, nope, we're just going to partially fund it for the month of November. I just want to remind everyone that the contingency funds were always there. This administration could have always released them and had this in order by November 1st, so no one would have to go without. They chose not to. And now they're choosing not to fully fund SNAP for November. These are the choices that this administration is making while they are throwing parties at the White House and golfing and going on vacation. And within the same breath, shaming people for food insecurity. Yay, America.
We have some major breaking news. The Trump administration says they will partially fund SNAP for the month of November. Now, of course, this order comes just days after the Trump administration was ordered by judges in the state of Massachusetts as well as Rhode Island to fund SNAP going into the month of November. Those two orders the Trump administration disobeyed at first because they said they needed to check with their lawyers, and then citing that this was a Democrat shutdown when in fact Republicans control all branches of government, and Republicans have been on 6 weeks of paid vacation. And Mike Johnson, of course, has just said that they're not going to be coming back this week as well. But they have now said they'll be at least partially funding it. That's according to one of the judge's rulings here. It goes on to write here from The Guardian, quote, the Trump administration has said in a court filing that it plans to partially fund food aid for millions of Americans after two judges ruled last week that it must use contingency funds to pay for the benefits in November during the government shutdown. And then it goes on to continue talking about how the United States Department of Agriculture is going to have to now tap into that contingency fund. Of course, that contingency fund is $5.25 billion that they would be using to fund SNAP, of course, for the 42 million Americans, but they're going to at least partially fund it, at least according to one of those judges' rulings, because, of course, it wasn't just the Democratic governors and attorney generals that sued to make sure that SNAP was funded for their states, but you also had nonprofit organizations sue as well. So you got two different rulings, one saying you need to fully fund it for the month of November, another one saying that you need to at least partially fund it for the month of November. So once again, the Trump administration is going to at least be partially funding SNAP for the month of November, as many Americans were concerned and heartbreakingly going into crisis mode, just trying to figure out how they were going to feed their families this month. A feeling that so many know all too well. Be sure to follow the Jeremiah Patterson Show here on TikTok, Instagram at TJPS News, as well as our YouTube channel, The Jeremiah Patterson Show, and check out our website, tjpsnews.com, and be sure to subscribe there for free, or you can become a paid member or consider making a donation to support independent journalism.
Y'all, this is not a drill. Breaking news. The Trump administration just told a federal court it's only giving out half of SNAP benefits this month. Because, guess what? They ran out of money. Over 40 million Americans rely on this program to eat, and right now, their EBT cards are coming up empty. So, here's what's happening, all right? The government, as we already know, has been shut down for over a month, and the Agriculture Department said it'll use every penny of its contingency fund, which is about $5 billion, to cover half of everyone's benefits for this month, November. You may be asking, why not the full amount though, Brad? Well, because they say they need another $4 billion to do that. And they're refusing to dip into the child nutrition program funds that feed school kids. So in translation, y'all, they're choosing between hungry families and hungry students. Judges in Rhode Island and Massachusetts had to step in, ordering the administration to pay up something after millions went hungry this weekend. Food banks are jammed. Texas and California are turning stadiums into, get this, food distribution sites, and people are still waiting for clarity. Meanwhile, 25 states have sued the USDA, saying these contingency funds were always meant for moments just like this, these shutdowns, not just natural disasters. And here's the wild part, y'all. This is going to blow y'all's wig back, okay? So in 2019, Trump's own administration said these same funds could be used during a shutdown. Now they're out here acting brand new. So yeah, this isn't politics anymore, y'all. This is survival. If you know someone who's depending on SNAP benefits, please make sure to check on them. Make sure you share this video, spread the word, because when the government fumbles, it's the people who go hungry.
He ain't never lie. You know, Trump would let this country go through a famine and sit on billions of dollars watching it happen. That's how evil these folks really, truly are. They are pure evil. So, I'm glad they're getting something because I could see the desperation on many of these folks when they were doing videos and they thought money was not coming in. Yeah, but it was not a lot of our people, it was them folks on videos talking about stealing from the store and doing some flash mobs running in there and stealing food. But it's still not the same. It's just like you going to the supermarket with half of what you normally spend. It's not the same. But, it may be enough to get you through a few weeks if you spend your money wisely. So, y'all, I'm glad they're getting something. I wish it was the whole thing for some people out here, but it is what it is. Look at who you got running the place. The basis of all men. I don't know why I've been saying that. It must be the Most High inspiring me because I've been saying that a lot. The basis of all men. That's who's running the joint. So you can't expect anything great or earth shattering. It's just not going to happen under their watch. Mm-mm-mm. Oh yeah, the prices of meat. Oh yeah, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And just think it's going to keep going up because you're in the biggest part of the holiday seasons we're entering. So, it's a big travel season. I don't know why anybody would travel. I got a story coming up with the air traffic controllers calling out. Y'all be careful flying. I'm serious. Y'all be careful flying. I wouldn't go near an airport right now. For real. So, y'all, thank you for being here. I deeply appreciate it. Dark Skin Brother, thank you for the super chat. Hold on one second here. These wicked beings think that they are in charge of their judgment. They think they can repeat 400 years of us being at the bottom. They are completely delusional. Yes, they are. And nobody's going backwards in life, especially for any of them. Thank you for your support for my channel. And Yaz Flame, thank you so much for your super chat. Queen Lisa, both parties are responsible for this. Oh, absolutely. That's why I don't like politicians. All they do is play games with people's lives. And all they do is gaslight us on everything that we want. They always got a new excuse on why they can't get things done when it's for us. So all of them are trash as far as I'm concerned. So y'all, I will see you on my next live, which I'll probably do in the next hour or two. So I will see you then. Shalom, family.